recorded. So I have the immense pleasure of introducing past international president Pat Johnson. I met her, oh wow, 6 months in person ago, and we immediately connected and bonded. And I think that she's inspirational, has a lot of thoughts, and I highly, highly, highly respect her. She's very well known for her book on how to, translate our program for corporations and build corporate clubs. So she has a lot of knowledge and insight on that, and I think it can help all of you as you're proceeding further in building the clubs, especially if you're taking a corporate path. So with that, I'll pass it over to you, Pat. Thank you for being here and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Angel, and welcome everyone. I'm certainly hoping that we can have an exchange tonight. I'll share information from my perspective, but I certainly invite all of your questions and curiosity about what I'm talking about, because there's many ways and there's a lot of stuff that I could share with you today. And I'm going to invite Angel to interrupt me when I need to quit talking to make sure that there's enough time for all of you to ask questions. So I'm going to start at the very beginning. And one of the things that I'm going to focus on tonight for me is on corporate and how we can meet them where they are. It's quite a paradigm shift for us when we go into a corporation. Some of us haven't worked in corporations. Some of us aren't familiar with the way they function. Just so you understand, that was my background. I ran learning and development departments and was responsible for the training of the employees within corporations to meet their training needs. So I managed the budget. I created a learning culture in our organization, and I reported to the CEO in terms of accountability of training our staff across the board. So all the way from our senior managers and vice presidents in their leadership skills down to entry-level people. So that's how I came to this concept, having been in Toastmasters now, well, 4 decades, and having worked in that role in the corporate world. And I realized that the corporate world didn't appreciate what Toastmasters offered, but most of that rested with Toastmasters because we didn't know how to place it so that the corporate world actually understood what we had and how they could benefit from bringing us in as contractors. So I'm going to use some different words today. And if you get confused with them, just raise your hand and somebody can interrupt me because I can't see all of you on the screen. But interrupt me and we'll clarify things as we go along. So I want to talk about our attitude before we start, because this is a paradigm shift for us. If we haven't built Toastmaster clubs within a corporation where we are literally partnering with the corporation. In the past, and I did this too, I did this even when I knew not to do it, I did it. I would walk into a corporation on a corporate visit and say, you just provide us the room, we'll look after everything else. And for me, that didn't work, because the corporation never took any accountability, never took any responsibility for making that Toastmasters program successful in their organization. And then we were left with trying to solve the problem, get people into those learning sessions, and they were oblivious. And I thought, we really need to partner. And so I thought, what would I want to have happen if I was sitting in my office in the corporation and somebody from Toastmasters came in to talk to me about the benefits of the program? So I want to say right up front, I'm not giving you any handouts tonight. I'm not providing anything. So if anything strikes you, you have questions, write them down. I'll answer them, and we'll go from there. So some things that I do personally to prepare when I'm going into a corporation. First of all, I I want to qualify this corporation to a certain degree, not right down to final details. And I'm not particularly even interested in the detail of the kind of business that they do and all the nuts and bolts of that. But I do want to know if they are all on a site or if they're spread out around the country or the world, because that's going to make a difference the way I talk about the Toastmasters program to them and how they would potentially offer it to their employees. I want to make sure that the corporation has enough employees that it's worth our effort, because we want to build a sustainable club, not one that lasts for a month or 6 weeks or 6 months or 1 year. It's way too much work unless they're around for 10 years. We want to build something sustainable. So I want to look at corporations that have at least, at the very minimum, I want 200 people in that corporation, and preferably much more than that, many more than that. I want to know that this corporation actually does education, that they have a learning culture in there. So there's a number of corporations out there that don't. They don't train their employees. They say, hey, we hired you, you're qualified to do your job. We're not providing training for you. Away you go. If you want to take a weekend course, help yourself to happiness. Those are people that I don't want to partner with because they're too much work. They're not going to play with us. And I want people that they have the mindset, hey, we're building internal people. We want people to be more skilled. We want to build loyalty in our employees by providing them with benefits. So, and we've got some infrastructure that is supporting training already internally that we, when we bring the Toastmasters program in, can actually access their ways of doing things. We don't have to create the way to make it happen there. They all know how they train their employees, and we want to find that out from them. The other thing that I do is really get a mindset that I don't have all the answers, and neither do you. Not for them, not for Toastmasters, and not for our partnership. And that's okay. It's okay. I'm going to go in and I'm going to be really curious. So almost always, unless there's some reticence on their part, almost always I start with questions. I ask them, do you have a training department that manages your training? How do you advertise internal training? Do you have a budget that is assigned to each of your employees or each of your branches? How do you manage the training money for your employees so that they can access it? What's the process employees go through to actually get into a training program in your corporation? Do they have to go through the supervisors and managers? Do they just come to the training department? And how do you hold them accountable? Is that put in their performance plans, and then it's followed up every 6 months as to, in terms of their results? Do you actually track their attendance at training events? Do you give your employees time during work for personal development, or professional development, I should say, professional development, skills that will increase their capacity on the job and in the workplace? So those are just some of the questions that I ask them, because it's going to hugely influence how we set up the Toastmasters program. See, the one thing we bring is a program that is really plug and play for them. We have a program that has all the exercises put in it. It has the workbook, it has tutorials, it has the evaluations, it has the learning objectives. All they need to do is make it available to their employees, some process, preferably the way that they usually run training in their corporation. We don't have to create the process. So I'm going to ask them how they do that. And then I'm going to make some suggestions that will support the unique delivery method of the Toastmasters program. I'm going to be right up front. I never hesitate to ask for lots when I talk to a corporation. When I ran the training departments for the various corporations where I worked, it was not unusual to spend $20,000 for one person to go 1 week for training. And it was basically a knowledge transfer. It wasn't even skill building. Money is not an object. In most cases, the biggest challenge will be the time. And I'm not hesitant to ask for that either. I ask them, and I say that the preference for people to actually benefit from this program is that we have this program is run for 1 hour every week, and the people are required to attend. So this has to be set up with their supervising managers, however they do that. That's their part of the partnership. And we will track attendance and participation and report it out to them every 3 months so that they know I'm paying for Pat and she's not showing up, or I'm paying for Angel and Angel's not participating in the program. They're only sitting there and cheering everybody else. So we want to be transparent because it reflects on how successful the Toastmasters program is. In most cases, if you're fully participating, you're going to get more benefit out of the program than if you're just sitting there and being passive. So those are things that I talk about right up front. And when they say, well, we don't give time during work hours, I said, okay, how would you like to hold your employees accountable if they're doing this on their own time? Because I want to find out if this is going to be actually a training program in the corporation, or if they're going to push it aside and make it a Toastmasters after work activity. And if they're going to do that, then we have a different conversation, because they're basically agreeing to host a community club inside their building. Okay, so that's when I changed lanes with them and keep going. But I also still put a lot of onus on them to ensure that this learning program has over 25 members at all times in the program. That it's not unusual for a contractor to come in and they say, the contract is, we're going to provide this training. We require 30 people minimum in this training program, or we don't deliver the program. So it is the onus is on the training department to ensure that that program is filled with people. And that's very common in that world. So that's what I asked them to do, to ensure that the Toastmasters program has a minimum of 25 to 30 people at all times in that program, because that makes it a rich learning environment. And that's their responsibility, not ours, because we as outsiders are not allowed to run around that corporation asking people if they want to come to a program. They have processes and we need to access their processes. So that's some of the things that I look at. I also am very bold in asking that they hold the learning sessions every week, because when they say, well, that's too much, I said, if you're training someone to do something really important in your organization, how often would you like them to practice? 60 minutes divided between 30 people or 25 people, how much airtime does each person get a week? Not very much. And that's if they're speaking. You might get 7 minutes if you're a speaker. If you're an evaluator, you might get 2 or 3 minutes. And the rest of the time, we're practicing our listening skills and our thinking skills. So we're working all the time and building skills, but the actual speaking part is very small and proportionately. So we want to emphasize that we need regular practice. Now, when I looked at the issue of corporate Toastmasters in the corporate world, there were a number of things that caused them to fail. And what for you do you know causes corporate Toastmasters to fail? Anybody know? One of the first things is not enough people. So we put that over on the corporation to make sure that the class is filled. Secondly, they die of isolation and boredom because nobody can get in and they don't do anything outside of their club. So after a year, they're all tired of looking at one another and go, well, we've figured this out. That's enough of this. I tell them that there's some mandatory things that they have to do. if they're one of the 7 leaders in this training program, being what we call club officers outside, but I don't use that term inside. If they're one of the 7 leaders in this program, it's mandatory that they go to leadership training. I use the M word because leaders do what's necessary to become leaders. And how can they expect, and how can we expect them to grow if they don't get exposed to anything other than their environment at the corporation? We need to get them outside of the club or outside of that program and that environment so they're exposed to the greater world of Toastmasters. I'm very heavy-handed, I will say, about them being participatory in area and division and district functions. I tell them that that's part of their growth, that that's part of their training program, and they need to access it, that not all the training will take place during work hours. The same as any leadership program we take in this world, it doesn't happen within confined hours of work. We take extra courses at night, weekends, holidays. We're reading on the bus back and forth to work. We're doing the extra things to get that extra skill. So I talk to them about that up front. So isolation. The other part is the lack of accountability. That this is another thing that happens to cause Toastmasters in corporations to not succeed or thrive or actually remain be sustainable, is that there is poor attendance. And that's why we want to have the supervisors and managers approve the attendance of that employee and put that expectation in the performance development plans of their employees. And then when the manager says, you can't go to your training program today because we're having a meeting, the employee can say, but I'm accountable to you for being at that training event. So the supervisors and managers are on board because they're holding the employee accountable to be at the training, and we're reporting attendance and participation back to the corporation. So we're building a partnership. Does that make sense so far? Okay, so yes, Sue.
I'm just curious, when you say we're reporting back to them, when you hand over the club, it's really going to be the company building the club and whatnot. So you just kind of put into their processes that they're reporting up to their management and not Toastmasters International reporting. Or are you doing something like, the DCP reporting saying, we see your membership's dropping too low, or?
Yes, sponsors and mentors, but I also would look at having some kind of a corporate liaison for a period of time. And ideally, if you can identify the champion inside the corporation. So I'll give you an example because it's different for each corporation. You have to find the way it works for each one of them uniquely. But about 20 years ago or 25 years ago now, it was when I first did my first real corporate program, not like a Toastmasters club, but a program, and gave it over to them. And I went in and they promoted it as a benefit to their new employees. They made it part of their new employee orientation. They encouraged all levels of their staff to participate in Toastmasters. They had it in their performance review plans. They talked about it. They did recognition globally in their business when every month they got together and celebrated their completions of projects because they were a project-based company. And they acknowledged all the achievements of Toastmasters as well at their monthly meetings. It was very exciting. But every 3 months, the VP would invite me, because I was part of creating that. I would stay in touch with them, even loosely. And every 3 months, I gathered that data and went to the VP. And so over time, they started as, the leaders of that program. Some of them would come with me. Sometimes they would have casual conversations, but the corporate VPs were phoning me saying, how is it going? What do you need from us to keep doing this? And I would say, and what do you need from us? So we really partnered back and forth, but I took attendance. to them, and I took progress reports, which was gathered by the so-called secretary, the administrative liaison in that training program. They kept track of the data, but I took it to the VP because they wanted to have a conversation with me because I was the contractor on the hook, right? So that makes sense? Okay, great. Thank you for asking. That's awesome, because then it allows me to explain things. I changed, oh, okay, Annetta.
Thank you, Pat. Real quick, and you can talk about this later if you have a better flow for it. Area and division directors, that's who I would have thought would have been in part of that process as well as the sponsor or mentor of the club. Do you have any additional on their role, or do you want to talk about that later?
Yeah. No, we can talk about it right now because I just want to, you know, there's so much depth to this and breadth. I won't cover it all. So I want to answer your specific questions. So area and division directors, the challenge here is that they change every year. The second challenge is, so first of all, the lack of continuity. The second is that they're not usually trained and they don't know how to deal with the corporation. They don't know why they're taking attendance to a VP. They're uncomfortable doing that. They don't know why they're taking a progress report to the VP. So if you can, ideally, if say, for example, I was involved, and even if I had mentors and sponsors that were carrying that club and getting it started, and I was in the background supporting them, I might still be that person that had face-to-face with the corporation. I might still be going in every 3 months and taking that data. I might take an area director with me if they wanted to be exposed to that. Or maybe the district has a liaison officer that's looking after the corporates and would be doing those things, which would be a fantastic role, I think, year after year, to be the corporate liaison and go around and visit the corporations and find some continuity in the district with those corporate programs. So yeah, great question. So the onus falls on the district also to train those area and division directors, because they have to understand how it's set up in that corporation. So they're not going in and talking hodgepodge to a group that says, oh no, we don't do it that way. Or the area director walks out and they go, don't let them in again. They don't even understand what we're doing. So we have to worry about our credibility and our trained staff. So yeah, we're our representatives that are there to support them. So understanding. So some things that I cover when I go, and I'm going to start with this in terms of how I changed my language, because we talk Toastmaster jargon, and most people outside of Toastmasters don't understand what we're talking about. Or the words that we use have an entirely different meaning inside that corporation. So you have to figure out some flexibility in this. You have to listen very carefully to them and see what kind of words they use. But these are some examples of words that I have changed in my language with them. First of all, when we're talking about the money, I talk about tuition, because that's what we pay in the corporation for people to go to school and take courses. We pay tuition. We do not pay fees or dues. I mean, we might pay fees, school fees, but we don't pay dues. Dues in the corporations that I worked at meant that we're paying professional organization dues, and most of them don't do that. So we want to talk about tuition. It helps them understand that we're an education program. So we want to look at that. We want to talk about, don't talk about pathways, because pathways means absolutely nothing to them. And it's quite confusing because we're saying, oh, Toastmasters, and you work pathways. And they're going, I thought we were Toastmasters, not pathways. Or what are we talking about? Talk about the curriculum. Use a general term. It's a curriculum. And you can talk about that this curriculum was built on adult education principles. It has approximately 300 competencies built into it. It's experiential learning. It's available online. Do you have access for your employees to be able to get to an online curriculum, or do you have to make arrangements with your IT department for that to happen? So again, another question that you have to ask when you start talking about curriculum. I let them know that that curriculum comes complete. It's like a plug and play. We've got learning objectives, we've got the lessons, we've got the tutorials in it, we've got suggestions, we've got demonstrations in it. Then we have the evaluation criteria attached to it based on what people are going to be evaluated on and get feedback from. So that is worth mega bucks in the corporate world, that they're going to get a complete package when they sign on with us. I talk about leadership training, and this is when I'm saying that those 7 leaders, which we might refer to as club officers, because I don't use the word club, I talk about a learning program. Those 7 leaders in the program need to attend leadership training. And so I talk about leadership training, not club officer training, because they won't know what club officers are because they don't have a club and they don't have officers necessarily. I refer to them as liaisons if you're looking for a word, because I see them, their role is to fit neatly between the Toastmasters and the corporation, and they go back and forth to manage things. They manage some of those dynamics. And as was mentioned in the chat, yes, that so-called leader that might be the chief liaison, or otherwise known as a president, might be part of that person group that would go and report to the vice president or report to that champion internal to the corporation. Because just think of a learning opportunity for them to go and meet with a vice president or somebody senior and be able to present ideas and data and talk about it. It's a great learning opportunity for them. So leadership training. I talk about feedback rather than evaluation, because that's what we use in the workplace for the most part. We give feedback to our employees, and we want to sell that skill. So often we find in the corporation that people refuse promotions because they don't want staff. They don't want to have to give evaluations. They don't want to have to give feedback. They don't want to have to deal with performance problems. But if we have feedback skills, we can do that. And so we can progress, and it helps them build internal skills in their people. So feedback skills. I talk about milestones. I don't talk about designations in Toastmasters because that's meaningless in the corporation. I talk about that we have milestones along that. We can work through phases of the program, and we advance through that. That it's there's no pass or fail. We come and we do our best. We get immediate feedback, and then we get to practice some more. And that's the secret sauce of the Toastmasters program. I talk about learning sessions. I don't call them meetings. Anybody work in a corporation where you're looking to have more meetings in a day? Oh my goodness gracious. People are saying, oh, we can't have any more meetings. We're already meetinged out. We don't have any more time. I said, how about a learning session? So I call them learning sessions or program session, whatever kind of word they use, because I'll say, what do you call your training events? It might be a training event. So it's really hard not to say club and meeting if that's your orientation, but do your best. Correct yourself if you say that we're having a meeting. Correct yourself, say learning session or program event. I talk about communication and leadership. I do not talk about public speaking. Public speaking does not sell. Not from my perspective, not sitting in that corner office. It was not a deal. It was a deal breaker for me if they start talking about public speaking, because my people said, we all speak in public. They're a bunch of smart alecks, but you know, it's true. So I talked about communication because guess what really sells? Listening, critical listening skills and critical thinking skills. Both of those are really in demand in the workplace. Building empathy, building emotional intelligence. That's what happens when we sit and listen and relate to somebody and give them feedback and understand where they are in their development. That all translates to those really valuable, used to be called soft skills in the workplace, but emotional intelligence, empathy, understanding, listening, curiosity to seek to first to understand that person and meet them where they are. So all of that. So critical listening, critical thinking skills. And then the communication part of it is, as I said, is listening, thinking, but then the speaking part of it is formal presentations. And I break it down. I tell them, yeah, we practice more formal presentations. So for example, if you need to do a formal presentation for your committee or your branch or even your organization, you can do that. You know how to prepare it and present it. We do informal presentations. We do impromptu speaking. I never say table topics. They don't know what that is. Impromptu speaking. And impromptu speaking supports their people in being able to listen, think, and answer when they're in interviews, which is highly desirable if they want to promote within their organization. So impromptu skills, and then those interpersonal skills where we build morale and we build confidence and self-esteem within the organization. And we connect with one another, which changes the dynamics. So that's how I talk about the skills that we learn. Again, I don't call us members, but I call them participants or learners. And I even do that in Toastmasters program. I say we're all learners, we're all students, we're all here to learn. Otherwise, we should get out. If we're not here to learn and pass it on, let's go do something else, put it to work in the place. The other thing is that I don't talk about presenting speeches, but I talk about doing presentations. The speeches gets really this weird, oh, we don't do speeches. Well, you all do presentations. So speeches has its, in some environments, has a weird connotation. So just really watch people and their reaction to the words that you use and listen really carefully for what they use. Any questions on language? You might have more ideas than I've presented, but that'll get you started. Any questions around wording? Okay, great. I never use the word volunteer ever, ever, ever in any experience of mine in Toastmasters. I voluntarily pay to come to school in Toastmasters. That's not a volunteer. That is a student. So we're not a volunteer organization. We're an education organization, and that's the only business we're in. So we voluntarily pay to come to school, but we're not a volunteer group of volunteers. So let's look at some other things that I think are really important for us to share with corporations in terms of them understanding how the program is actually going to unfold and what it looks like. And I don't go into any detail of the pathway, the curriculum, unless they ask. I just talk about objectives and criteria and the tutorials and all that material and the evaluations, and that it's all contained for the, the complete program is there. But then I talk about the fact that they need to understand this is a self-paced program, that everybody's going to go through it at a slightly different pace. So I might come and I'm super shy. I might only do 2 presentations in 6 months because I'm really shy, I'm hesitant, but they need to work that out with their supervisors and managers and their employees. How much progress can that person make? And we somehow have to support them in understanding how that is. So we have a role as a Toastmasters and the contractor to make sure that somehow they understand how the program works. Okay, so it's self-paced. Ask your employees when they want to go to the program, and after they've been there a couple of months, what do they think they can accomplish in 6 months? And then hold them accountable inside the corporation. I let them know that we learn in a team environment. So one of the things I'm really aware of, because I worked in a corporation, the second last corporation I worked in, I had a very hands-on CEO, and she was on the same floor as my department was, and she loved to walk around. And she would go and stand in the doorway of training programs. And then she'd come to me and she'd say, oh, I was in on that conflict resolution course today. That instructor was very interesting. And there was some, she always had an opinion, and she wanted to let me know what her opinion was, which was pretty valid because she was giving me the budget to do that. And I was accountable for meeting the needs. I was very conscious that if she went and stood in the doorway of a Toastmasters program, she would say, where's the instructor? So I need to let them know, and we need to let them know right up front, that there are people that are going to come and support you up to 1 year for the start of this program, because there's lots to learn. But when we have continuity and we build those participants over up to 2 years, I recommend that they stay in there so that they get the good benefit, a minimum of 2 years, that then we build that team environment where we support one another. And the more mature people have more skills, and we start to peer learn and peer feedback, while there'll always be people checking in to make sure that the integrity of the Toastmasters program as the contractor is being maintained, but that we will ultimately, our goal is to create that team environment and support. That all the course materials are going to be provided, and the corporation will provide the process. That I also let them know that there's support at the local level, at the district level, but also internationally. And that is also part of the entire program that their employees get access to. Their employees could ultimately qualify to serve on an international board and help run a global organization if that's their goal. Their employees ultimately could be a world champion of public speaking if they wish to do so. That every one of them has access to that global organization and the benefits of it. It's entirely up to them. I let them know that we're building skills, because this is very different from most training that we do in the corporate world. And I also let them know that there's no pass or fail or graduation. I thought that I wouldn't need to say that, but I learned the hard way on that when I had somebody phone me in my corporation and say, I've been sending Jan to Toastmasters for 2 years. When is she ever going to graduate? I went, oh, you didn't understand that there's no graduation. Jan's going to go as long as Jan feels like she's learning something, or you as her supervisor says, hey, time for someone else to have a go. So it's important to let them know, because that's not their context. Generally is that there would be training every week for 2 years for these people. I let them know that it's very experiential again, and it's a unique delivery method, and that it's our responsibility to help them get there so that they can understand it. Some of the transferable skills, and this is really important, and this is one of the things that they're really anxious to learn about when we're talking about benefits for them. I talk about leadership and communication skills, as I've already talked about, that critical listening and that critical thinking skills. I talk about meeting management, that we learn to run meetings and set agendas and end and start on time. This is highly valued in the workplace, right? Heather's going, yes. And we can all think of people that we wish would be more Toastmaster-like when it comes to their meetings. We learn accountability in Toastmasters because we sign up and we show up, and we phone people when we're the Toastmaster, when we're the chair of the meeting, to make sure they're going to be there. So we teach accountability. We look at setting and managing goals and some strategic planning, because we do a strategic plan for our program each year so that each person can set their personal goals and we work to achieve success on a global level. We compete and measure ourselves with every club in the world within the Toastmasters program. And yes, we also have management training. Not everything is leadership and communication, but we do a fair amount of management skills as well. So the teamwork that takes place and the feedback skills that I've already talked about. So those are the main things that I talk about in terms of transferable skills. And then I just say, do you think that your organization would benefit from any of those skills? If not, I am not interested in doing business with somebody that doesn't want our product. I'm happy if they go, you know what, this wouldn't work for us. And I said, okay, great, I hear you. I'm interested in your thinking on that if you would share it, but I'm not going to talk you into something because I want somebody that's keen, that wants the benefits, or I'm not wasting my time. I'm on to the next place. So you want to find an organization that has a learning culture, that their goal is to train their employees, to support their employees, to let their new employees know that they have education benefits within their organization and they're supporting them with time and money. And have that conversation. It's not a deal breaker if they're going to reimburse their employees when on successful completion, but if they say that, I'm right away, I'm like, tell me what successful completion is for you then, because you're going to have to articulate that with your employee and hold them accountable. I can give some suggestions to you what that might be. Right? So because they don't understand the program, we might have to help them with that. The other thing is that as an organization, the Toastmasters organization, we need to provide the corporation with materials so that they can properly promote the program. Do not let somebody else promote our program because they do not know the program. They'll say, oh, I'll talk to our managers and see what they think. I say, is it possible for me to attend so I can answer any questions that they might have? Oh, I used to be a Toastmaster, or my father used to be a Toastmaster, or my grandmother was a Toastmaster. I've got this. I'll say, Toastmasters is a new experience every month. And in the last 5 years, it's dramatically changed. So if your experience is more than 5 years old, I'm sorry, but you can't represent how the program works. So don't set ourselves up to be misrepresented either. So any questions or comments on that? Yes, Sue.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions.
Okay, good. I love it.
The first one is, and this is probably like later when the club's running, but do you do any upfront work in like understanding what the culture is in terms of what topics they don't ever want their employees to be discussing? Like maybe politics is completely verboten in their company culture. Like how do you sort of explore what the cage is for a corporate club?
Yeah, a great question. Thank you. One of the things that I've done in the past, and this is how I came into Toastmasters, which was 4 decades ago, but we always said no politics, no religion, and no sex. Basically, we wanted to create a safe place for everybody to participate and share. And that was the guideline at that time. I find that for the most part, that holds in the workplace now. And there's gray areas in there, but basically that's my suggestion. But I ask them that if they have what's appropriate, and I let them know what our core values are. So if anything that happens in the Toastmasters program needs to be within the boundaries of integrity, respect, service, and excellence. So the onus is on us for the service and the excellence and the integrity of doing what we say we're going to do. But so then I say we would like that to extend to the program so that everybody is respected, that there's integrity in the program, and people are serving one another and the program serving them as well as excellence. So whatever that might look like. And then I asked them too, what are your corporation's core values? And would they match up? And I would say, for me, that our goal would be when we deliver the program that we represent our core values, but we uphold their core values as well, because we wouldn't want them to have a learning environment that we were responsible for that didn't respect their core values. So again, it's that partnership. Yeah. So great question. Thanks. But it's one of those that you have to wiggle around and figure it out. It's not always straightforward. And they might not think of it right away. Yeah.
I guess the other one.
Yeah, another question. Yeah.
Let's see if I can remember. Oh, you sound like you have a method of researching the corporations. Do you do like Glassdoor research, like what people are saying about the places they're working for? Or do you just look at the company website? What's your method?
You know what? I spend so little time before I go in the door of a corporation. I want to know how many employees they've got. If I can find out how many employees, I want to know how many work sites they have. But most of that, I just go in and I just, whoever I'm meeting with, I just say, tell me about your company. How many employees do you have? What kind of learning do you have? Are you all on site? How do you run your business? Are you hybrid business? Do you run your business online? Years ago, before COVID, I went into a corporation on a call. I was down in the States and I was called in to make a call because I forget why I made this call. I think I was visiting a district and they said, would you go and visit this corporation? I said, absolutely. So away we went off to this corporation. We walked in and the owner of the business walked out into the waiting room. It was quite a small waiting room and said, welcome to my business. I'm so-and-so. Glad to have you here. Just come with us and we'll meet with the team right away. And I said, okay, great. We introduced ourselves and chatted, walked into this room, and the wall was covered with monitors. And I'm looking at that going, oh, interesting. And as all the monitors came on, now today this would seem quite commonplace, but in those days it wasn't. And all the monitors came on and it was the head of HR and there was organizational development and there was policy and there was finance and all. And I said, oh, is this how you run your business? And he said, yes, we're all over the States. And this is how we meet. He said, can we do Toastmasters this way? And I said, if you can do your business this way, you can do Toastmasters this way. Now, that seems pretty obvious today, but before COVID, it was unusual and we were struggling with doing clubs online. But and so they went ahead and were very interested in the Toastmasters program because it was possible for them. We didn't have to tell them how to do it. They already ran their business that way. So it was just a given. Of course, they're going to do their training that way. Yeah, they do their business. Yeah. So I hope that answered.
I'm just so cut in for a moment and say, oh my God, that was so good. I just wanted to share, like, it's so good to hear someone else say that. It's the meeting them where they are that matters. Like you could, so further elaborate on what Pat's saying, you could look at Apple, for instance, the way that their brand is formed, the way everything to the public is so polished and put together. You would think, Sue, that you would need to dress up like fancy dress, fancy suit to go in. No, they wear jeans and t-shirts in their offices. So you could do as much research as you want about a company on the outside, but sometimes you get really shocked once you walk in the door and realize they're all wearing pajamas or something.
Yes, I've been there. I walked into a Toastmaster meeting and they were all in very, very, very casual clothes and Crocs and like not, for me, not proper shoes and sitting on the floor and sitting on the desk. And yeah, it was very, very casual. And It was like, I'm not there to be the school teacher or the disciplinarian. I'm there to talk about the Toastmasters program and however it fits into their world. And if they can work the program, the same as doing youth leadership in high performing high schools. I just let them do what they wanted to do. Some of them were writing poetry. Some of them were preparing for some dramas they were in. They all got credit for working the program because that's where they were. So it's not, you have to fit in this neat box. We have to look at how is it adaptable for our audiences for them to learn, because we want to have them speak, present what means something to them, and get feedback and build confidence and self-esteem. So yeah, it's very cool. Jerry, I see your hand up. Question or comment?
Yeah, a quick question, Pat. When you spoke on the companies possibly, okay, say they engage and accept the program and they're going to reimburse the employee. How has that worked in the past versus I would think the employee is more eager, except what the company's going to pay. But when you originally speak with them, you just promote the program as far as the benefits, and that makes them more acceptable to the Toastmaster program?
It's all over, Jerry. There's not one answer for most of this. If they do reimbursement for all their training, their employees, that's what they know. That's what they accept. The employee's not going to rail against that. They're just going to go, oh, that's just the regular training. I want the Toastmasters program ideally to be listed on their intranet as a training program, just the way conflict resolution, project management, planning your daytime, or whatever it might be that they might be offering. I want it listed there, and the criteria, that there's no prerequisite required. This, ultimately is a weekly 1-hour program, and there's homework to be done outside of the program so that they know when they sign up. This is an hour a week commitment in addition to preparing time. And let them as a corporation do things the way they do them, because that's what their employees are used to. If they reimburse, figure out what reimbursement is for us, because it's successful completion, because they're not completed. There's no, what do you say? We have to say, well, is it that you want them to finish a path? So this would be a later conversation. When you're determining successful completion, is that a completion of a path? Because that would mean all these things. And if it's self-paced, so you have to help them through these details, because this is Toastmaster jargon that they don't understand how the program works. And so remember, what I do is remember what the first day I went into Toastmasters, and I remember it very vividly. I knew nothing, right? I knew nothing. So if I assumed anything, it was probably going to be wrong. So that's where they are. And the onus is on us to sit and listen to them and ask them questions so that we understand them. And often when we start asking them about their training, how do you pay? Do you pay for your employees to get professional development? Do you pay up front, or do you reimburse them? Because we'll have to figure that out if there's reimbursement. And the other thing to talk about is that they do renewals every 6 months, because a corporation does not want Johnny to join this week and Bill to join next week and Jerry to join the next week. And every week they're sending money off to Toastmasters and applications. They're not going to do that. So I talk to them about every 6 months, creating a wait list, because we create wait lists for courses all the time in the corporate world, having intake every 6 months. So if people are ready to leave, I recommend that they have a policy that people can stay up to 2 years, because that's kind of optimum to get good basic foundation skill built. But every 6 months, they need to check their membership or their participants and see who's continuing. And if there's blank spaces in that amount of people that they've agreed that they're paying for, then they can take people off their wait list and insert them and then start to bring them up to speed. So that's another real hard thing for the corporation to work out. So we have to help them, because usually we pay the contract and it's done, right? We might pay, and we might pay installations of, we've run the course for 6 months and we'll pay you this. So we have to help them understand that we've got people that are going to be coming and going, but probably to manage in 6 months, because that's when you're actually sending money in. And then we have to get them over the board boundaries of how to submit the money. And that's, again, a leadership opportunity for the person that might be the financial liaison in the program, that one of the leaders in the program is going to work with the finance department and Toastmasters International to get an invoice or whatever they need and get that money figured out so that they can ship it off to world headquarters, so that we can continue to provide the program. Because remember, if they don't pay, they get cut off. They don't have access to it. So we have to facilitate them getting paid. And so that's training also for that financial liaison employee that's inside there to work with finance and Toastmasters and get that sorted out. So lots and lots of details. But you know what? If you keep thinking about it and think, what problems do you have to solve for them and what can you ask them about, and just be really curious with them, they'll tell you what you need to do for them. Just don't take it all. Just partner with them. Just say, here's what you need to do. We'll bring the curriculum. You bring the process. You organize your people. We'll train your people. Because we're only the trainers in the curriculum. We're not running the organization. They are, and we don't want to step on their toes. Marcia.
No, Pat, I just want to give an example of the things that I'm finding out by contacting the corporate clubs in my district. You know, things like Edison, Southern California Edison, they include Toastmasters in their new hire orientation program.
Yep,
You know?
perfect.
So there is a lot of different ways to collaborate. And now, to your point, Pat, how we have to be flexible, okay? Not everything works for everybody, right? Yep. So we are working with a university now, and the university is a closed university, okay? Yep. So we're not gonna have, you know, Facebook, it's going to be Slack, it's going to be particular to that corporate need, you know. But yeah, that's, but it's getting more and more detail, you know, and more, so that's why we need more people to help, more people with knowledge to help.
Yes, absolutely. And the confidence to not have all the answers, just to know that you're going to build a relationship with this corporation and figure it out together. But we need to have the questions and have thought about the processes that have to be in place to support the employees to be able to show up, to grow, and what is good for the organization, like what is good for Toastmasters. We have to look after our interests in this partnership. They'll look after theirs without a doubt, but we need to look after ours as well. So when they say, well, we can only get 15 people, I'll go, the program doesn't work well with 15 people. So we need a minimum of 25 to 30 people in the program. And we need to sustain it at that, because why I say that is over the 6 months, if you lose 5 people, now you're down below minimum. They don't run anything minimum in corporations. So we don't want to set them up for failure to say, oh, you missed distinguished recognition as a corporation in this program. because you didn't meet the minimums. That's our responsibility. So don't set them up with minimums. Ask them to have a full class, 25 to 30 people there. If they're not big enough to support it, then ask them, are there other organizations or corporations that they naturally work together with, that they could form a collective? Look at other ways of doing it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Then if it doesn't, you can say, is there a way that we can promote Toastmasters for your employees to attend into the community? Can we be part of your new employee orientation and let them know, give them information about where this is in the community available to them? Would you reimburse them for that? Would you acknowledge that in their performance review plans? Would you see that as a benefit? So I'm willing to explore with them because they haven't even thought of most of these things. So just get in there and dig around with them. Yeah.
So this is a
I'm
real
over time.
communication experience. Huh? It's a real communication experience. Thank you.
Well, I love
It's
you all. I love
Big,
you all.
big ears.
But I
Big
have
ears.
to I have to do
Yeah.
what Pat asked me to do and say time. Because we're at I love
Yeah.
Pat. And if Pat's I thank you so much for being here. I know that she could probably go on for another 4 hours about corporate clubs. And
You're right.
the fun part is remember what I tell y'all in the beginning, the famous answer to every question in the tech industry is it depends. And it's the same here. Anything you're gonna ask, there's so many different situations and scenarios you could go into. And the answer is always to be it depends. Like Pat was saying, companies do contracts differently than Toastmasters. So recently we had to get a club on a yearly billing cycle. There are some companies that prefer to do every 2 years, as Pat was saying. So remember, like, everything's different. You're not alone. Luckily, you have people around you who are knowledgeable in corporate aspects. And you have me and the club growth team here to support you, as I told you before. So thank you, Pat. My final reminder to everyone here is going to be get me your lunch meeting dates and give me your club ideas. Please don't make me have to hound you this week. Other than that,
And please,
Oh,
if
go
I
ahead.
can, Angel, if you get stuck or you want, if you've got questions, please pass them on to me through Angel. I'm glad to have conversation further if that's useful. I just wish this team amazing success and a lot of fun. Like, don't be afraid. I oversold a club and never ever got the club. And I walked out and I thought, ooh, what an expensive lesson. They never ever came back, but I didn't quit talking. And I just needed to listen to them. And I learned that lesson in the corporate world. So yeah, you'll have great experiences.
Well, okay.
Back to you,
I
Angel.
wanna real
Thank
quick
you.
add a comment on what Beth put in the chat, and then I'll get to you, Annetta. We would love sometimes to just put everything in a nice, pretty list. I have an acronym list for you if you want that. But the funny part of it is, and I'll give you a very specific example of this. Toastmasters Leadership Institute is a form of club officer training that Toastmasters has, right? And that wording honestly sounds very professional, could take out to a corporate club and should be fine. However, we actually have a university in our district, Caltech, that will not allow any event named with institute to be held at their location because it violates the naming protocols because they're not an institute and they're not like a class sanctioned by the university. So that's where Pat was saying you have to go in and listen to how they speak and there are certain intricacies. because especially if you're working with universities or you're going into places that deal with the government, they could tend to have very specific and restrictive ways of speaking that they have to use. So yeah, just it's not very common, but yeah. Sorry, the screensaver on the TV totally just turned me orange.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a broad body of knowledge, and then you customize it and work down as you work through the questions with them and just go with it. They don't know where we're going either. So it's just